What's up, everybody? It's me, FalGoDio, and today we are going to be talking about My Friendly Neighborhood. So I actually put up 2 videos of gameplay on this series, but the parts I recorded after that, while I had actual decent footage of it, had a lot of issues with the audio, both on the game side and on my recording. So I just decided not to use it, and instead we're doing a review.
Looks like there's been a change of plans.
That's right, we are doing a review. Never done one of these before, but I figured I could give myself a shot at it. As somebody who is not an avid reviewer and pretty much just an average casual gamer, I thought, why not just give my opinion on a game I played quite a lot of. So, My Friendly Neighborhood. What are some good things about it, and what are some of the bad things about it? Well, it's not Game of the Year, I can definitely tell you that, but it's more like breath of fresh air in some ways. Now, what do I really mean about that? Well, let's grab our Rolodexer and
Let's be excellent! Let's be excellent! Let's be excellent!
right into it. So what is My Friendly Neighborhood? Well, let's take a quick look at the Steam page for this.
Something scary is happening with everyone's favorite Saturday morning puppet show, The Friendly Neighborhood. Play as Gordon, a repairman sent to get to the bottom of this disturbing dilemma. Fend off puppets and solve puzzles in this survival horror adventure.
Now you may notice that the game actually has overwhelmingly positive reviews, and that is nothing to scoff about. So yeah, the game is basically Sesame Street gone wrong. That is pretty much said wherever you look at a review for this game. Any article or other YouTuber will basically pretty much say it is Sesame Street gone wrong. So I'm definitely not original in saying that, but it's easily the most common sentiment that you can give it. Like the description says, you play as Gordon and you are set out to shut down a broadcast from an abandoned studio, when all of a sudden the elevator to get to that antenna is pretty much glued shut. So long story short, basically need to find a way to open that elevator while fighting off dozens of hug-loving and friendly obsessed puppets. Now, I'm gonna put a big spoiler warning for anybody who really is actually interested in playing the game for themselves. I would recommend that you actually go and play the game, support the developers, and come to your own conclusion. If you like it or hate it, it's pretty much up to you. That is your preference, and I won't stop you from loving or hating this game. There is a story here, and it goes pretty in depth using things like newspaper clips and documents that you can find throughout the studio. I won't go pretty much in detail with that just because there's other videos that you can look at, and I'll kind of list them all like right here for you if you are interested in checking those out. TLDR is that there was a show that played and it started going kind of off the rails with its morals that it showed off to the kids. There's mention of a war that took place that may have had an impact on the show and how its messages were altered. So essentially, a lot of the parents didn't like that and just kind of eventually faded into cancellation, essentially. As far as the story goes, it's pretty straightforward and it's easy to understand. But I'm gonna be honest here, I lost interest reading a bunch of the documents as I just felt it ate up so much of my time when all I really wanted to do was just play the game and have fun with it. I would have loved for some of the story building elements to just have been through some kind of audio recording or even passively through like TV interviews or something like that. Like just to make it a bit more appealing and kind of stray a little bit away from the documents and reading all the time. Not that I have a problem with reading in general, and you give me a good book and I'll read it, but like they could have come across so much better, and I think a bit more organically than just straight up newspaper clippings and documents that you can that are sprinkled throughout the studio. Like for instance, there's actually a very good example of where something like that could have been a lot more beneficial. Right at the end of the game, after defeating the final boss, Gordon actually enters this room of what I think is the CEO's office of the company, and he reads this statement, and it's titled "The Final Address." Right? It's actually a really good statement. I read it. It's really good. Like when you actually look in that office, right? There's actually like lights and cameras and stuff like that, so you're led to believe that it was televised. Again, they could have just gone and had you find a tape, or as soon as you walk in, this a TV plays inside that office or something like that, where it just kind of shows that statement being read. And I think that just would have been so much better than just reading it on a paper. It just feels like it would have been the obvious take on that. Let's actually take BioShock as a very good example of this. When it comes to world building, you can find audio recordings for things that have been going on in Rapture. Things like experiments going wrong, all the way to parents finding out that their parents were in that same experiment.
We saw our Masha today. We barely recognize her. That's her, Sam said. You're crazy, I told him. That thing? That is our Masha? But he was right. She was drawing blood out of a corpse by Fontaine Fisheries. And then when she was done, she walked off hand in hand with one of those awful golems. Masha!
It had documents, newspaper clips on the walls, and intercoms that would like spill out exposition, but it was always organic. It just felt better to get immersed in the story. However, it was things like this that made BioShock's story so rich and deep and easier to follow for you and more engaging, while My Friendly Neighborhood just kind of makes you want to skip most of it.
Skip. But when does this game get fucking good?
Personally, I don't really want to play a game and then have to read a small novel's worth of narrative just to be immersed in the story and want more of it.
Look at all those
Locations. Location. Well, there are pretty much a good amount of interesting areas here in this game. You have Studio 4, the sewers, offices, garden, and a few others. And while I love the idea of most of these areas, there's not much to be discovered that helps with world building or anything like that. For example, the garden is like a very small area with almost nothing going on really. There is like a playground that sort of suggests that people may have come to the studio to play. I don't know, maybe like on studio tours or something like that. Like, or maybe employees brought their kids over or whatever. I don't really know, man. I don't know. I can't figure out another reason as to why the playground would be there. It's kind of random. Another example would be the cardboard section of the game, where everything is cardboard. And you can see these things like personal libraries, kitchens, a kid's room, and some kind of outside patio or cafe and other stuff like that here. These are really cool looking areas, and some have a few interesting puzzles, which kind of stumped me for a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But once you actually know it, you know it. It's really that easy. Now, while these are really cool looking, they don't really make sense. For example, why am I able to cook and chop ingredients that are cardboard to then put into a fridge and then get a key? I don't know, but I can. How does this computer open these doors in the other room? It's a cardboard computer. I don't know. I really don't. Am I thinking way too much into that? Yeah, I'm definitely thinking way too much into that. Does it take away from the fun of the game? It probably does. But hey, I still think it's one of the coolest areas in the game and one of the more interesting ones in level design wise. As I just mentioned, I'm sure there's more story and explanation to these locations. But again, I was just left not wanting to read any of those documents because it really just comes down to how organically the information could have gone through. And it didn't hit for me as well. Now finally, let's talk about the enemies, the horror aspect, and the gameplay. Gameplay wise, it's pretty solid. I may have noticed 2 bugs in the game at the time that I was playing, and only one of those was kind of annoying. The first one was just me running along this wall ledge, and I was able to kind of just float in the air, essentially. I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to be there, but it was. The other bug that I had that was actually kind of annoying was when my gun disappeared from my inventory. Yeah, it just straight up disappeared, and I was unable to find a reason why for a long time. It happened 3 times while I was playing in the same playthrough. If I have some footage of it, I'm actually going to put it right here, but essentially the gun would disappear and I couldn't get it back unless I reloaded a save to where I actually had my gun. The only thing I could think of was maybe I was holding too much ammo. I was on a New Game Plus, so I had ammo from the previous game. So I started to hold only 3 or 4 stacks and would stash all of my other ammo for that gun into my stash. And that actually fixed it. So I'm not sure if that's going to be something that they patch up or whatever later on. But if you play that and it hasn't been patched, just kind of keep that in mind to hold about 3 or 4 stacks of ammo and just kind of put the rest of it to the side, because even on harder difficulties, ammo is so easy to come by. On the topic of weapons, I think there's a pretty good selection here. Not too much, not too little, just a good amount.
Now we're talking.
You have the Rolodexer, the Novelist, the Wrench, the Punctuation, and the Conclusion. The coolest things about these weapons are definitely the names, hands down. The Novelist even has a book as a grip. I mean, come on, that's cool. They were definitely creative with that and the fact that the weapons shoot out letters. Now, you can find all these weapons through normal gameplay. It's actually really easy to find them. But for some of the weapons like the Conclusion, you do have to explore a bit more and backtrack in order to get it. Now, as you play, you can find these tapes that unlock cheats for you once you actually complete your first playthrough. And let me tell you, they are pretty interesting. You can use cheats that make the game either easier or harder for you just based on how you want to play. There are things like infinite ammo, mega wrench, invincible enemies, speedy enemies, just to kind of name a few. And I played around with them quite a bit and found them very enjoyable. Most of the cheats are fairly self-explanatory, and I feel like I don't really need to go too much in depth about them. My own playthroughs, and I've played a few times now, I haven't unlocked every single area or every other cheat tape. But I did find a picture that you could easily use to find out which ones that you want to look for if you want to find them yourself.
Enemies.
Now, these enemies are educating loving, hug obsessed, and annoyingly persistent type puppets. Personally, I've never liked puppets. Always gave me the creeps. Sesame Street creeped me out as a kid. I'll never watch it. I still won't watch it. But I did think it was a good concept for a horror game, and I thought, I'd get some good scares in because I hate puppets, and I just, it looked like a fun time. You can defeat the enemies just by pretty much using your weapons, whichever weapon will work for them, but they always come back. Kind of like how Evil Within is, like if you don't burn them, they can rise again. It's essentially just like that. So every time you leave a room and you come back, they can pop back up. Now, in order for you to have them down forever, for things like you want to go through these areas that you're always going to go through, you can find tape, and then you can actually tape them down and they won't get back up. Now, they'll still be alive and kicking, and they'll be saying whatever they want to say, but they won't get back up. They can't hurt you even if you walk on top of them. So their dialogue is fairly interesting. It doesn't matter where you go, you can always hear them, and they're always going to be talking and spitting out their lines. And they're fairly funny to listen to. Some of them are...
Let me tell you about the time that my friend Junebug got me all upset at her. I beat her to the ground. Then I stopped her face. Then we started laughing at each other and everything was okay. That's why you should always try and make friends with friends who will forgive you.
Yeah. So...
Why are we still here?
Now, the dialogue can be pretty interesting and funny to listen to, but sometimes it can be kind of annoying, and that mainly has to do with the fact that every single puppet says the same thing over and over and over again. It doesn't matter which puppet you come across, each one says essentially the same thing, like they don't have their own personal dialogue sometimes. And I wish it wasn't so. I wish each one just had their own kind of dialogue to make them a bit more personable to their type of character. But it's definitely good for a first playthrough, for sure. Now with the enemies in mind, let's talk about one of the more disappointing aspects of the game so far, and that's just its lack of horror. Every area is brightened up, and like I mentioned earlier, since you can kind of hear all the enemies in every room that you go into, you know that they're there. And you can pretty much hear exactly how many of them are in the room at one time. It just kind of lacks in jump scares, it lacks in suspense, and so you're able to just kind of go into that room saying, hey, I can take you out if I need to. In fact, the only area that really had a bit more horror-like elements to it was near the end of the game when you fall into this underground part of the studio, and it's absolutely pitch black, it's dark in there, and you finally find this flashlight and you actually need it to be able to see anything. That was a lot more cool, and it felt like it was really gonna be a horror game at that point. This place was actually called the Unfriendly Neighborhood, and the enemies make a brief appearance in there, and they're way creepier than the ones that you saw earlier. Like, they have no eyes, they're dirtier, they have human teeth, which I mean, just look at that. So creepy. Now, while they are creepy, they're only there for a little bit. Like I said, they make a brief appearance, and you just run away from them until you find this ramp, and you just drop down, and then you're finally at the final boss. And when you're fighting that final boss, they don't make another appearance after that. In fact, if you really wanted to get a better look at them, you can actually just stand on that ramp and not even shoot them or anything, and they won't come to you until you get a little lower to the bottom of the ramp. You can just stand on that ramp and just look at them, and they won't chase you. It's a bit immersion breaking, but how's that final boss that I just mentioned? Well, it's stupid easy. Yeah, it's way too easy to defeat that final boss at the end of the game. In fact, you don't even actually have to fight him at all. You can just run away until the gate opens, because you're supposed to open this gate in order for you to run away and then go up and to activate the elevator. You don't even need to fight him at all. He's not fast at all. He has no abilities to make him threatening. He just looks overgrown and like an amalgamation of ugliness for no reason. Like he's not threatening at all. He doesn't jump and shake the ground so that you stumble a bit or whatever. Nothing like that. It's just too easy to defeat him. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's only one other boss battle in the game, and that's it. There's this funnel boss, and then there's this overgrown curtain in the office. Now, the boss at the end of the game is super easy, and the one in the office, the curtain, is not hard either, but was a bit more interesting at the very least. It could spit out enemies, and those enemies could actually rise up and chase you if you needed to, but the final boss just does nothing. And it's so baffling that he does absolutely nothing and is the final boss of the game. I can't even tell you just how many times I was led to believe that there was going to be some kind of boss battle for there just not to be one. Let's take Ray in the sewers, for example. You're led to believe he's a pretty unhinged guy, even before all the events in the game, and has always given people trouble.
Unrelated, how do you feel about blunt force head trauma?
What is it this time?
Well, Ray, of course. He's the best sort of monster janitor thing. But he's a little obsessed with, organic maintenance.
Is
Tends
he?
to pop out of pipes and clobber people with his wrench.
Great. Are all of you puppets crazy?
Well, Ray has always been a little grouchy, even before the shutdown. That's why they moved him down here.
Other than trying to grab you out of some conveniently placed pipes, his final encounter is really boring.
Oh boy. Hey, that's not gonna fix it.
What do you want?
Fix.
Yeah, I fixed it.
Good.
Well, I'm going now.
There's all that build up for no battle. You end up being able to help all the notable bosses without fighting them at all. The closest you'll get is probably when you meet Goblet, and all she does is chase you slowly in a straight line and then turns. So like she's not a threat at all either. On top of that, you can just kind of move to the left or right to avoid her, and that's it. Like you don't have to fight her. You can put her down, like you can throw a grenade in her mouth and she'll explode and fall into the ground, but she gets back up because she's one of the more, again, notable bosses. Now, I don't mind helping out the characters of the game. In fact, I did this naturally through my gameplay because I actually wanted to do that when I found out I could. The only thing is that I just wish they had some kind of boss battle before that. Being it easy or hard wouldn't have mattered to me, because then we could have had that and then made the choice of either helping that character or not. You know, either saying, yes, I'll help you, or we finish them off, ending their Sesame Street career. I think that would have just been the icing on the cake. My Friendly Neighborhood is a pretty fun experience with interesting gameplay. There's a story to tell here, and if you like taking the time to read a bunch of documents, then by all means go for it. As for me, I'll go watch a video about it if I want to. While enemy encounters are pretty simplistic in design, there are some fun moments to keep you engaged and wanting to see more of it. Can I recommend this game to you? I would say absolutely. At just $30 and no microtransactions that block any of the experience, the game is definitely one I would recommend you try out. But that's my take on the game. Did I leave some things out? Most likely. Did you like the game, or did you have some critiques about it? Whatever you thought about it, why not share it in the comments below and have a discussion? All right, folks, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching, and consider leaving a like or subscribing to my channel if you're new here. I would really appreciate it. It doesn't hurt you to do so at all. So yeah, just let me know what you guys like about this video. It's definitely not what I normally do, but I'm thinking about kind of moving forward with doing more review content because I kind of like it. I think this is more fun. Well, that's all I really got for you today. This is FalGoDio wishing you a friendly day in the neighborhood. Bye-bye.